Okay, we're going to start assembling the transmission, the gearbox for the Enfield Interceptor. It might be very similar to the Enfield 500 single, the gearbox. There might be a few minor differences, but it's mostly all looks all the same. What I'm showing you here is the end bearing number which I'm using. So I'm going with a fresh bearing. Cases have been cleaned, and that's the new bearing. And what I went with is basically a sealed bearing, but I opened the inside of it so the oil can get to it, and this seal is going to provide me extra seal for the back, so it's going to sit from the inside this way. And we're going to start by putting the bearing in like this, and then we're going to put the gears and everything into it. So I'm going to start off by putting this bearing right in there. Inside's been cleaned, it's nice and shiny. The seal I kept, it was still good, but those seals are available. If your seal looks bad, I would recommend changing that. Okay, the bearing's been fitted in there, and that was kind of easy. It just kind of laid in there. Okay, next is this 25 tooth main shaft gear. I think it's called low gear. That would go on top of this main shaft, just like that, and that gets dropped right into the bearing there. And that too is not so tight in there, but I'm trying to push it in to the center of the bearing, and I might use a rubber mallet just to push it in through. Okay, after the main shaft has been put in through the bearing, I'm going to put this 2 gears, sliding gear, 21 teeth and 18 teeth main shaft. So that would slide on top of it, and it's going to be the bigger gear going inwards. Okay, we got those couple of gears in here, and now it's time to put the lay shaft in there. Now this bushing right here, one side it's flat, and the other side has a little taper. So the taper goes inwards to the brass bushing inside. So we will put this over here, just like that. And then this is the 15 gear, the smaller gear, and that would be going inside. And this is the kickstart side, this side. So this side going in, but there's a little trick part to this. Before we can put this in there, we have to get this selector right in there. So the selector would go inside first. We can just place it right in there for now. Then this is the selector, the selector itself, and that would go inside with these tabs to the bottom of them. Now when you put your gearbox back together again, you can see where the wear marks are. If it's the bigger gear mark is on whichever side it is, you want to put that towards the inside, because the bigger gear on the top is inside and the smaller gear is on the outside. So I'm going to try putting this in there. Basically, what I'm trying to do inside the gearbox is trying to get it to sit like this, where the gears are in here, the main shaft gears are in here, the lay shaft is gonna sit right in here. Okay, that part is done. I'm gonna flip it around just so the weight takes those selectors down, and I'm gonna try to push the lay shaft in there with all the gears in it. So these two gears in the last 15 gear and the bushing and the lay shaft. So I'm trying to get it all in there at once. Make sure the bushing does not fall. Okay, the lay shaft is at home, and I'm gonna flip the gearbox again back, and I'm gonna try to get the selector holding screw from the side into the other side. Okay, I figured it out. It's kind of hard getting these gears in the box with everything all lined up. So I have the main shaft here with the big gear there and the bushing on the other one in there. I'm gonna drop the smaller 15 tooth gear right in here and just let it sit. Just let it sit in there. Okay. Next, I want to get the cluster here with the bigger gear and the smaller gear here, and the bigger gear on the bottom and the smaller gear here. And it's actually this gear, the larger gear, will be going inside on the main shaft, and the larger gear on the outside on the lay shaft. So I want to try to get this in there together. It will take a lot of wiggling, but I got it in there once. But it takes a while, so try to get it in there. Maybe lay this in here first. Lay the fork in there first, and let's see. Okay, and then try to get the gears in there together. Let's see if this works here. Okay, got it. At least I got the fork and the gears all in once together. I'm going to put the fork pin in through the side and try to get the fork so it can pivot, so I can move the gears up and down for the lay shaft to fit in there. So let me get the okay, got the fork pin in there, and that's the locking screw. Just put it half tight in there, so it just doesn't fall out. And okay, now at least I can get the gears up and down. Now these gears are fine, but there's another gear, the 15 tooth, the small gear that's in the back. Now if you have the transmission in the bike, it might be just hard to try to get the lay shaft through, because the gear is gonna keep them falling down with gravity. So it's a lot easier if you have the gearbox out. I'm sure if you have the gearbox inside the bike, I mean, there might be ways you can kind of hold it there somehow, throw some grease on there or something, I don't know. But since I have the gearbox out, I'm going to try to put it up like this and try to line everything up. And so I can see the gears are all kind of lined up. And trying to shove the lay shaft through. Now it's still going to take a lot of wiggling in there to get it onto the end push inside. So it's kind of it'll take some time, but I haven't found an easier way of doing this. But once you know your lay shaft is in the bush, you'll feel it smooth and it'll be right in there. Okay, I think I got it in there. There's not much wiggle, and everything seems in place. So it took some work getting the lay shaft through all those gears. I'll show you a little close up on it. Okay, now this is secure in there, and that's the gear selector. So everything seems smooth in here. This is pushed right in there, and we just have to do the rest of the gearbox now. So this is in home. The hard part is done. The gears are in. Now we have to get the main shaft through in here, and so we're going to do that next. After all these gears are put inside, I'm going to put the main shaft through with the dog and the 15 gear already attached to it. If yours came out, you can put it afterwards. Let me just slide it through since they're pretty tight in here. I didn't try to take them out. They seem fine. I'm going to put them through, and there it sits. At this point, I can put the gear selector holder in there. I'm going to tighten it through halfway. And it looks like this, with this side towards the outside and towards the inside. I'm going to screw that in, just hand tight, and that's the selector, gear selector holder. So once, like this is the first, let's see, up, neutral, second, third, and the fourth, actually. Okay, at this point we're going to drop the kickstart gear right on the lay shaft. Another 14 gear. At this point we're going to put the sprocket on the drive side, The first thing that goes is this spacer, which the oil seal rides on, and if this has any kind of marks on it, feel it with your hand. If there's something that is very sharp, you want to smooth that out, otherwise it will just kill that oil seal right there. After the spacer is gone, right on the rubber seal, I'm going to put the sprocket. The sprocket sits right on there. The nut that holds the sprocket has a felt washer right in here. That sits right in here. And that would lock up. To lock this nut, there's a screw here. Once you have it tight enough, you would secure it right on the sprocket. There's two grooves. Whichever you find the tightest, you would screw that in, so this doesn't come loose on you. So it would be tight enough, and then you would put the screw right in there. This screw, I would put a Loctite on it, just in case it doesn't fall out. That screw would hold halfway. If you try to push it all the way through, it's going to go through. It's not going to do its job of holding the nut here. So halfway with some Loctite on it, it'll hold this from coming undone. On the Kickstarter, there's an oil seal. There's an O-ring here. If this needs replacing, you want to replace that before you want to put the inner cover on. Next thing would be to get the gearbox cover, the middle cover, on. How we do that is, first of all, we gotta insert the gear selector in here, put some grease in between here, or oil, thick oil. Next would be the Kickstarter shaft. Put some grease on here and shove it through the cover. Put the cover on. This gear selector would go right over this the selector, and have it in between here on neutral, and put that on there. Before you do that, make sure this bushing is in here. There will be a gasket that goes on here. The gasket would go on first, and then the cover. To get the cover in place, I'm gonna move the Kickstarter around and push firmly till the cases come together. Next thing would be putting the gear selector on. Be sure the spring is on here, and the little one up front here. And put the gear selector pins on there with the bush on there. And these screws will go on top here. Have the pins tight before you tighten these on here. Check your bearing, inspect it. If it needs to be replaced, replace that. Now on the older English Interceptors, the bearing number is M7V3, which is a standard. It's an odd size. It's kind of hard to find. But the current Enfields use a 6306 bearing, which is slightly bigger than the older machines. So sourcing these 6306 bearings are easy. Older bearings are hard to find. They're odd size. Make sure you get the right one. And the kickstarter spring would go on. That would go right in the hole there, and just let it sit right there. Then that's the gear selector. That actually would go on before the final plate. These will be compressed. I didn't tighten the bottom bolts here. So you have the bearing in there, a spacer, and it's a oil ring that would go right on top of the bearing, a locking washer, and the final bearing nut that goes on top. This is a left hand nut that goes on. It's an opposite thread. Now you can have that set up before you actually put all of this in here. The whole thing has to go on before that, because this cover would go sit right behind that. And the spring would go on this bolt right here, and it would sit in like this. Then you can tighten up the screws. Actually, there's one screw behind here that would have gone in there, that would go on before this whole setup is done. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that hold the middle cover. Once you have this locked up, then the outer cover goes on. 2 long bolts go in here, and I believe the outer cover does not have a gasket. This assembly can be done after you have the gearbox in the engine, so you still got to put the cable through over here for the clutch, and the shaft, the pin that goes through here for the clutch, and that can be put from the other side as well. And that's your Enfield gearbox.